know both worlds. The West is the best. That's the essential idea all the time. The West is the best. Where does this myth originate from? It's because it's still the prime motivation.
Exactly. The myth originates in, if I were to give a Hegelian philosophical origin of it in Hegel, but sociologically and historically it originates in the aftermath of the French Revolution, demise of the Christian ecclesiastical order and the collapse of European dynastic nobility, the rise of middle-class European bourgeoisie, and the need of this middle-class bourgeoisie to fabricate a name, a concept, an idea that embraces its claim to civilizational unity, and it calls itself the West. We're very, very recent vintage. Plato did not think of himself European, neither did of the Western, neither did St. Augustine, neither did Machiavelli, neither did any of, not even Adam Smith. I mean, the coinage of the term is very, very recent, and idea of it recent. And in my judgment, philosophically, is rooted in the monolithic narrative of Hegel and Kant's philosophies, and sociologically and historically, it commences with the rise of European colonialism and the formation of national economies and national polities and national cultures within Europe, British, German, French, Dutch, etc., and then an attempt to bring all of these nation states and national polities under one umbrella, and that one civilizational umbrella, and they call it the West. And then the Orientalists go around the globe manufacturing alternative but inferior civilizations, Islamic civilization, Chinese civilization, Indian civilization, in order to counter-corroborate and counter-essentialize something that they had created in the West called the West.
Iranians have fended for themselves by oscillating among nationalist, socialist, and Islamist terms of their struggle for freedom and democracy.
What I mean is, I want to break this binary of Islam and the West, and this is along the lines of tradition and modernity that do away with the notion of authenticity. There is no such thing as authenticity. Hybridity is the way that the world is formed. But that hybridity doesn't mean anarchy, doesn't mean confusion. What it means is the formation of what in my book I call worldly cosmopolitan cultures. Worldly cosmopolitan cultures that are aware and conscious and communicative and conversant with the rest of the world. And as a result, pigeonholing cultures into the religious identification or culture or so-called cultural identification is simply flies in the face of historical experiences. Historical experiences of nations by virtue of who they are and where they live and roots and manners and modes of communication and conversation are cosmopolitan, are multifaceted, are polyfocal and so forth. And it is the nature of ideological struggles that, first of all, it essentializes, it fetishizes the notion of nation, and then attributes to it everlasting metaphysical religious attributes, Islam, Christianity, or what have you, and denies them the factual evidence of their worldly historical experiences that have been conducive to the formation of cosmopolitan culture. A cosmopolitan culture that, if it is allowed to work out its own particular dynamics, is not at odds with the world, but in fact is conversant and is thriving in that conversation with the world. And this is what I'm after.
How can the West then marginalize others if they don't create this paradox?
They marginalize others by forces of violence, by command over massive weapons of mass destruction that they have. George W. Bush is the most idiotic president that this country has ever had. But by virtue of commanding a massive military machinery, he can come and utter the most outlandish gibberish in the world, but because he is in a position of power, people have to listen. So throughout the last 8 years, 3 or 4 people have been chiefly responsible to define what Islam is. One of them is George W. Bush, the other one was Blair, and the third is Osama bin Laden, and the fourth is Cardinal Ratzinger, now the Pope. Okay, these people, they were in a position of power, authority, and prestige to define what Islam is. So histories of scholarship, of activism, of nations struggling for their decency, etc., means nothing. What matters is who has the louder podium, the louder microphone, and by virtue of the power of that position, people listen. So when you or I go to a gathering, to a meeting, to a conversation, to an interview, we begin with the assumption of what Islam or Iran or Arabs or Muslims, etc., are, that have been fabricated by virtue of these sorts of people. So if the Pope, I still know him as the Cardinal Ratzinger because he was chiefly responsible for opposing liberation theology in the Vatican and the previous Pope, finds in some medieval text something about Muhammad and comes and utters a nonsense, then that becomes Islam. And the rest of the world, scholars, activists, human beings, etc., they have to struggle to demonstrate otherwise, whatever they want to say. But in my particular case, I don't want to say, no, Islam is the greatest gift to humanity. Islam is like Christianity, is like Judaism, is an abstraction. What matters is nations or peoples. Muslims are more important than Islam, as Christians are more important than Christianity. These things are abstractions, and they don't, in the historical unfolding of reality, they don't mean anything other than those who believe in them make of them.